Erev Tov and good evening, everyone. We are doing the Zera Shimshon on Parsha Yitro. We're going to be doing Os Hey, section number 5. And we're going to look at a couple of psukim in the Parsha first, and then we'll get right into the Zera Shimshon's comments on those psukim. So in the Parsha, this is in the first Aliyah, Perek Yud Ches, Pasuk Tes. So it says as follows: Vayichad Yisro, and Yisro rejoiced al kol hatova asher asa Hashem Yisrael, on all of the good that Hashem did for Bnei Yisrael, asher hitzilo miyad Mitzrayim, that he saved it, meaning it, the nation of Israel, miyad Mitzrayim, from the hand of Egypt. Then the next pasuk, pasuk Yud, Vayomer Yisro, and Yisro said, Baruch Hashem asher hitzil eschem, blessed is Hashem who saved you, miyad Mitzrayim, from the hand of Egypt, umiyad Paro, and from the hand of Paro, asher hitzil es ha'am mitachas yad Mitzrayim, who saved the nation from under the hand of Egypt. So we have those two psukim, and then the Zera Shimshon comments as follows. Pasuk, it says in the pasuk, Vayomer Yisro Baruch Hashem asher hitzil eschem miyad Mitzrayim. Blessed is Hashem who saved you from the hand of Egypt, v'chuli, etc. And that's the pasuk we just read. Koshe, this is difficult. The chol pasuk nire miyusar, because all of the pasuk seems redundant, seems extra. Now here, the Zera Shimshon doesn't mean this entire pasuk, as you'll see in a moment, but he means most of this pasuk really seems repetitive. Why? All the pasuk needed to say, apparently, was that Yisro blessed Hashem for saving you from Egypt, from the hand of Egypt. That's all that would have been necessary. Umahu shechazer lomar umiyad para. What did it mean in the pasuk that after the Torah relates that Yisro blessed Hashem for saving the Jews from the hand of Egypt, that he also said, and from the hand of Paro? That's redundant. Obviously, we were saved from Egypt, and we understand that meant from the leader of Egypt, from Paro. The ode and more, asher hitzil v'chuli. The whole second half of the pasuk seemed to be repetitive because it just repeated that God had saved us and from Egypt, etc. It didn't seem to add anything new. That's the Zera Shimshon's basic question, is that this pasuk seems to have, at least half of it seems to be superfluous. V'hameforshim, and the commentators, Kosfu, they wrote, Dimiyad Mitzrayim, that when it said from the hand of Egypt, Perusho Sar Shel Mitzrayim, its explanation was from the angelic representative of Egypt. This idea is based on a statement by Chazal in many places that every nation of the world has its own malach, its own angel representing it. And so the commentators come in and they, of course, also see the same question that the Zera Shimshon is asking, which is, what's with the repetitive words, the unnecessary words in this pasuk? And they say, wait a minute, you need to know that it's not necessarily redundant, because when it said from the hand of Egypt, that didn't mean from the Egyptians, that didn't even mean from Paro. That meant from Saro Shel Mitzrayim, that meant from the Hashem saved Bnei Yisrael from the very powerful angelic force, the force of the Malach who represents Egypt. So the Zera Shimshon says, Mikol Mokum, nevertheless, Kosher Sofa Pasuk. Okay, that's fine for the first half of the Pasuk. Why did the Torah say Miyad Mitzrayim and then Miyad Paro? So the Zera Shimshon concedes that answer of the commentators about Saro Shel Mitzrayim, that the word from Egypt means from the Malach, from the protection of the Malach representing Egypt. He says that's good for the first half of the pasuk, but the whole second half of the pasuk still seems to be redundant. The ode, and more so, Shemiyad Mitzrayim Nami Sagi. Still, we have our question that all you had to do was say Hashem saved Bnei Yisrael from the hand of Egypt. Why would that have been sufficient? The kivan shenitzolo mehasar, because since we were rescued from the angelic representative of Mitzrayim, the angelic protector of Mitzrayim, nitzolu nami miyad ha'am, then that means by definition we were also saved from the people of Egypt, because if the Malach protecting Egypt Hashem said, no, you're not going to be able to stop the Jews from leaving, then that would imply that no one in Egypt, certainly not the Egyptians and certainly not Paro, would be more powerful than the Sar, than the Malach. So if we were saved from the Malach of representing Egypt, we would also be saved from any other force down on earth that was involved in Egypt, whether that's Paro, whether that's the Mitzrim themselves. The ode to Tevas Mitzrayim koleles bein hasar ubein hamitzriyim. And the word Mitzrayim, Egypt, this includes all the forces protecting Egypt, whether it's the Malach, whether or not it's the Egyptians. Once you say in the pasuk that Hashem, once Yitro would have said that bless Hashem for saving, Baruch Hashem, blessing Hashem for saving the Jews from Mitzrayim, that should have included, that word itself could have included any power that was protecting Egypt, whether it's the Malach, whether it's Paro, whether it's the Mitzrayim themselves, the Egyptians themselves. So really the Zera Shimshon, although he kind of broke his questions up into different parts, it's really one fundamental question, which is that when we look at the pasuk, we see that it seems very repetitive in its mention of saving the Jews, saving Bnei Yisrael from Mitzrayim, from Paro, then repeating in the second half of the pasuk, Asher Hitzil es ha'am, that the people were saved and they were taken out from the hand of Egypt. It's clear that there's got to be something going on in this pasuk. The Zera Shimshon is saying that that is more than what meets the eye. What meets the eye is a pasuk that has certainly some redundant elements, seemingly unnecessary elements. And what he wants to do now is tell us what's really happening in this pasuk and why all of these different pieces are actually necessary and are actually teaching us something very important that, again, doesn't readily meet the eye, is not what we see when we look at the simple pshat in the pasuk. So let's continue in the bottom paragraph in the first column. V'yesh lomar, and we can say, de kavonas Yisro hayisokach, that the intention of Yisro, when Yisro blessed and thanked Hashem, this is what he had in mind. Baruch Hashem asher hitzil eschem miyad Mitzrayim. Blessed is Hashem who saved you from the hand of Egypt. Asar shel Mitzrayim. This refers to, as we said, as the Meforshim said, this refers to the Malach who represents and protects Egypt. Shahaya lo tana neged Yisrael. That this Malach had a specific claim against the Jewish people. And the nature of this claim, we'll find out exactly what this claim was, as Zera Shimshon is going to tell us exactly what this claim was, but the nature of this claim was such as for the Malach to say to Hashem, because of my claim, the Jewish people should not be allowed to leave Mitzrayim. So the Sar Shel Mitzrayim, the angelic officer representing Egypt, this Malach had its own claim. Umiyad Paro, and then when Yisro said, and also Hashem, I bless you because you saved Bnei Yisrael from the hand of Paro, Shahayilo Nami Ta'ana Acheres, because Paro had his own independent claim, separate completely from the claim of the Malach, and fundamentally different from the claim of the Malach. So in other words, should not be allowed to leave. Separate from that, Paro had a different claim as to why Bnei Yisrael should not be allowed to leave. So we have those two ta'anot, those two claims to deal with. V'ketzad hitzilam, and how did Hashem save Bnei Yisrael? Asher hitzil es ha'am, the phrase that he saved the people, zehu teretz neged tanas hasar shel Mitzrayim. That phrase is the answer to the claim made by the Sar of Mitzrayim. Umitachas yad Mitzrayim, and then Yisro continued and said, not only did you save the people, not only Asher Hitzil es ha'am, but also umitachas yad Mitzrayim, you took out Bnei Yisrael from under the hand of Egypt. That phrase, Zehu Teres Latanas Paro, this phrase contains, although we don't yet know how, but we're going to see, this phrase contains the answer to the claim that Paro made. So before the Zera Shimshon gets into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of what each little phrase and part of the pasuk means, let's just make sure we understand the kind of framework that he's just given us. What the Zera Shimshon is saying is that we need to take the pasuk that we read before and we need to divide it into 4 parts. And that will help us see that there's no redundancy whatsoever. Every phrase, every little section of the pasuk is absolutely needed because it's teaching us something that the previous parts of the pasuk would not teach us. We wouldn't know from the other parts of the pasuk. So I'm just going to read the pasuk again to show you how he breaks it up into kind of 4 parts, and then we'll get into the Zera Shimshon his explanation of each of the parts. But here's the pasuk again. By Yomer Yisro, when Yisro said, Baruch Hashem, blessed is Hashem, Asher Hitziel Eschem, who saved you. Now, Miyad Mitzrayim, that's one separate point, from the hand of Egypt. And that means from under the power of the Malach that represents Egypt, the Sar of Mitzrayim, the angelic power representing Egypt. So Yisro understood that this Malach existed, and this Malach was very powerful, and Hashem saved Bnei Yisrael from this Malach's particular claim about Bnei Yisrael not being allowed to leave. Umiyad Paro, and also God saved Bnei Yisrael from the hand of Paro, meaning Paro had, again, an independent, separate claim than from the Malach, and Yisro says, God, you also saved us from his claim. Continuing, Asher Hitziel Esha'am, God, you saved the people. That phrase contains the answer to the claim of the Sar, of the Malach, mitachas yad Mitzrayim, and then the last 3 words in the pasuk, from under the hand of Egypt. That phrase contains the answer to Paro. Again, we don't yet know how those are the answers to the claims, but the point is now we see how the pasuk breaks up. The claim, Yisro is saying, God, you saved Bnei Yisrael from the Sar, you saved Bnei Yisrael from Paro, and there are words that tell us how God saved us from the Sar and how God saved us from Paro, and now we see how the whole pasuk is how it's really teaching us, how each of its parts is teaching us something different. So now let's get in to the actual substance of the Zera Shimshon's commentary. The bottom line of the first column. V'hainu, and this means the Hasar Shel Mitzrayim, the Malach of Egypt, Hayasolo, he had Tana Neged Yisrael. He had the following claim against Bnei Yisrael. Ma nishtanu elu me elu. What is the difference between these people and these people? Meaning, from the Malach's perspective, like we like to say sometimes, looking at the situation from 30,000 feet. So here we're talking about the Malach, so we're talking about, looking from the stratosphere, from the Malach's perspective of Shamayim, looking down, the Malach said to Hashem, there's no difference. What is the difference between the Jews and the Egyptians? She'enam ru'uyim Yisrael lahasos lahem nes. The Jewish people are not spiritually worthy to have miracles done for them, culminating in the Kriyas Yamsuf. They don't deserve that. They're not different enough spiritually from the Egyptians for the Jews to deserve these miracles for them, and for them to be taken out with this great earth-shattering, unprecedented miracle of the splitting of the sea. That they don't deserve that. Mipnei she'avdu avodah zara b'Mitzrayim, because there were Jews who worshipped idols in Egypt. There were Jews who fell prey to the terrible sin, one of the cardinal sins in the Torah and in Judaism, of avodah zara, and they did that. Ki de'isa b'Medrash Rabbah, as the Medrash Rabbah states. So here the Zera Shimshon is alluding to something that we've seen in previous pieces in the Zera Shimshon from Chazal, that there were Jews, in fact, who were Oved Avodah Zarah, who transgressed and worshiped idols in Egypt. And so therefore the Saros Shel Mitzrayim, the Malach of Mitzrayim, is saying, when I look down on earth, I see Ovdei Avodah Zarah, one group of Ovdei Avodah Zarah, the Egyptians, and I see another group of Ovdei Avodah Zarah, the Jews. So why in the world, Hashem, should you say this people, the Jews, is on a higher spiritual level, and they deserve all kinds of special treatment, incredibly special treatment and miraculous treatment, again, culminating in the Kriyas Yamsuf, in the splitting of the sea, to save them from the Egyptians, who were supposedly, allegedly, so much so much cruder and so much worse and such bigger transgressors, the Malach says, I see idol worshippers and idol worshippers, and I don't see enough of a difference between them that the Jews deserve the special treatment that you're giving them. So that is the Tana Shel Saro. That is the claim that was made by the Malach who protects and represents Egypt. Paro hayasolotana, and Paro also had his own claim. She'adayin lo sholmu ha'arba meo shana, that the Jews did not complete the 400 years of servitude. And this we talked about in last week's section of the Zera Shimshon, that Paro knew the calculation. Paro had and his advisors had studied the Jewish people, and he knew that they had a tradition dating back to their forefather Abraham, that they would be strangers in a foreign land, and they would be enslaved for 400 years. And so Paro said, you were not enslaved in 400 years. As a matter of fact, you haven't even altogether, all the years that you spent in Mitzrayim don't equal 400 years, don't come out to 400 years. So you're leaving way too soon. And that was Paro's claim. And that, of course, it's readily apparent that that's a totally different claim, a fundamentally different claim than the claim that the Sar, than the Malach was making. So the Malach had its specific claim, and Paro had his specific independent claim. And because of this, Paro did not wish to send out the Jewish people. It's as if he was saying to the Jews, I understand that you want to leave, and I understand that all these terrible things, the makos, are happening to me, but it's unjust and it's unfair because you haven't fulfilled the amount of time that you were supposed to be here. And Paro argued that with great conviction. V'lachein Omar, and therefore the pasuk said, Miyad Mitzrayim u'miyad Paro, that Yitro recognized that Bnei Yisrael Hashem had saved Bnei Yisrael from two different claims, each with its own perspective and its own kind of validity. The claim of the Sar, of the angel, that the Jews were not spiritually worthy to be redeemed and to have miracles done for them, and that Paro's claim that the Jews were leaving way before the amount of time, that they themselves had a tradition that they were supposed to be in Mitzrayim and in servitude in Mitzrayim. Those are the claims. Ukeneged Tanas Hasar, corresponding to the claim of the Malach, of the angel protecting Mitzrayim, Omar, Yisro said, Asher Hitzil es ha'am, that God saved the nation. She'im tisakadatin lomar, that if it would occur to you to say, She'HaKadosh Baruch Hu ma'avir hadin al Yisrael, that God is doing something extra legal, meaning he's doing something that's beyond the law. He's showing favoritism to Bnei Yisrael that is outside of the legal process. If you want to make that claim, which is exactly the claim that the Sar, that the Malach made, Va'afal Pisha Avdu Avodah Zara, and your claim is that even though the Jewish people worshipped idols, no Selahem Panim, God still showed favoritism to them, Bishvil She'ahavosam, because he had a particular love for them. So the Malach was claiming, God, you have to act. You're supposed to act as an impartial judge. You're supposed to have the Midat Hadin, the attribute of justice. And even though you love Bnei Yisrael, and even though there may be reasons why maybe because of the Avos, that you have a special love for their descendants, for Bnei Yisrael, it doesn't matter. You're acting in a way that is outside of the law, because you're showing favoritism to them, even though they're, like he said, like the Malach said, they're of the Avodah Zarah, and the Egyptians are of Avodah Zarah. Ultimately, they seem to be really deserve the same kind of treatment. If you claim that lo hayalo lahatzil es ha'erev rav, then Hashem should not have saved the mixed multitude. Now, of course, we know about the erev rav. The Torah specifically mentions that when the Jews left, the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude. Erev means a mixture, and Rav means many, like Harbe, a mixed multitude, a great amount of people mixed in with them. And Chazal tell us that these were Egyptians who converted, who accepted upon themselves to be part of the Jewish people, and they left, a tremendous number of them left, joined up with the Jewish people and left Egypt when during the Yetzias Mitzrayim, during the Exodus from Egypt. So if you're claiming that God had a special feeling and a special love for Bnei Yisrael, and that's why he was breaking the rules, so to speak, and he was doing miracles for them and taking them out, none of that should have applied to the Erev Rav. None of that would have applied to the Egyptians who had joined the Jewish people and had none of this special. Hashem had no special feeling towards them, as the words of the Zera Shimshon continue. Dahainu hamitzriim shaboi mohem. This Erev Rav, this mixed multitude, referred to the Egyptians who came out with the Jews. Gemosha pirshu hamaforshim, as the commentators explain, de et ha'am, that when it said the people, the am, Ratzalomar, this intended to, this referred to Erev Rav, this mixed multitude of Egyptians who had joined the people. She'ein leHaKadosh Baruch Hu ava klal im elu mitzrayim, because God had no special love for these Egyptians whatsoever. You can't make the claim that God loved them because of the avos, the schus avos of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. These people had no connection to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You can't claim that they had had a history of special connection and service to Hashem. They had no history of special service or connection to Hashem. These are Egyptians who had just joined up with the Jewish people. So your whole claim about God's special love to the Jews wouldn't be applicable in terms of the Erev Rav. Elavadai, but definitely midahatzil af ha'erev Rav, from the fact that Hashem not only did miracles and rescued the Jewish people, but he also did these miracles and rescued the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude. Muchach, this proves, mikan, from here, shahadin din emes, that the law that God was applying was the true law. He was not showing special favoritism to the Jews. The Yisrael pirshu min ha'avodah zarah. And it proves that the Jewish people, whatever their failings might have been previously in Egypt in terms of getting entangled in idol worship, Yisrael pirshu min avodah zarah. The Jews had separated themselves at this point before they left from avodah zarah. Va'af ha'erev Rav pirshu min ha'avodah zarah. And even the mixed multitude at this time had separated itself from the idolatry of Egypt. This was part of their conversion to join the Jewish people. V'ru'uyim lasos leasos lahemnes, and therefore it was fitting to do for them a miracle. Masha'ein kain hamitzrayim, which would not be true of the Egyptians, shelo pirshu meha avodah zarah, who did not separate themselves from avodah zarah. So let's pause here, because the Zera Shimshon has now explained very clearly to us the claim of the Sar, of the Malach of Mitzrayim, and the response. And that whole response was included in the few words, Asher Hitzil Es Ha'am. That's why most of us missed that and didn't see that in the pasuk and thought that there might be extra words. So the Zera Shimshon says an entire worldview, an entire philosophy almost, if you will, is included in that phrase, Asher Hitzil Es Ha'am, because what's happening there is the ruling by Hashem, so to speak, that Yitro recognized that Hashem said, okay, Sar Shel Mitzrayim, Malach, that represents Egypt, you're claiming that there's no real difference between the Jews and the Mitzrayim because they all worship avodah zarah. That's not true, and it's demonstrably not true, because Hashem not only saved the Jewish people themselves from Mitzrayim, he saved and did miracles for the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude, also passed through the Yam Suf, and the water did not drown them, of course, and they were saved and they were rescued. And how could that be? And the answer is because they stopped worshiping avodah zarah. This was a rejection of the argument of the Saro Shel Mitzrayim. No, it's not true that they all are just a bunch of idol worshipers, two different groups of idol worshipers. We have one group of Egyptians who worshipped idols in the past and are continuing to worship idols and to cling to the worship of idols, even notwithstanding everything they saw of the Yad Hashem, of the existence and the might of Hashem. Nonetheless, they're still worshiping idols. However, the Jewish people and even the Erev Rav have given up the worship of idols at this point, and they deserve the miracles that were done for them. That is Yisro's point with those words about Asher Hitzil Es Ha'am. Now let's continue to the last paragraph in this section. Umasha Omar Mitachas Yad Mitzrayim, and then in the last few words of the pasuk, Yisro says, and you took them from under the hand of Mitzrayim. Hu keneged tanas paro. This corresponds to the claim that Paro had made. Klomar, this means to say, emes hu sheyisrael ru'uyim lehishtabed arba me'el shana. It is true, Paro, that the Jews, that the nevuah that I gave Avram Avinu, the prophecy that I gave to Avram Avinu, which had been passed on amongst the Jewish people, and Paro had even come to your attention. It's true. I did say that they would be enslaved for 400 years. Aval HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo gozar sheyiyu tachas yad Mitzrayim dafka. However, it never says by the bris bein abesarim that these 400 years would mean a servitude to Mitzrayim, specifically in Egypt, to the Egyptians for 400 years. Mitzrayim is never mentioned in the bris bein abesarim. So therefore, Paro has no claim that the Jews had to serve Paro himself and the Egyptian nation for 400 years. Ve'in hachinami sheyesh lahem l'shalem tachas uma acheres. And it's true. Hashem conceded to Paro. Yes, it's true. Your claim has an element of truth in it, and the Jews will ultimately have to serve other nations to fulfill this prophecy of 400 years, and they will fulfill that. They will be strangers in foreign countries in a future exile, and they'll complete the 400 years. But Hashem says, Paro, so to speak, you didn't read the contract carefully. You didn't read the fine print, where you made an assumption that the Jews would be 400 years in servitude in Egypt. And that Hashem never said. And that's why the Bnei Yisrael was entitled to leave before the 400 years were fulfilled. Again, as we saw in last week's piece in the Zera Shimshon, that this was in fact the case. And Bnei Yisrael went out because Paro himself was broken and told them, you need to leave. Vayhi b'shalach Paro es ha'am. That's where the Zera Shimshon was commenting. The Torah tells us and testifies that Paro himself sent them out of the land, and they deserved to go at that time because of the intensity of the suffering and the shibud that they had undergone. So let's just recap for a moment. What the Zera Shimshon has done for us is very characteristic of the Zera Shimshon. He takes psukim very often, very frequently, and even separate individual words and phrases in psukim, and he asks questions on them, very basic questions often that we would ask when we would read the pasuk. For example, in this case, we ourselves would probably sensed when we read that pasuk, or would sense it now if we read the pasuk, that there seems to be repetition, there seems to be redundancy, and the Zera Shimshon has taught us to never ignore that kind of notation. If we our mental recognition, if we see words that are redundant, if we see words that appear extra and appear superfluous in a pasuk, the Zera Shimshon says, don't just keep reading. That means something. There must be something else going on that would explain why the Torah is using words or phrases that appear to be unneeded and unnecessary. And that's exactly what happened here. The Zera Shimshon said, let's take a deep dive in this pasuk and realize that it's actually broken up into 4 different components: the claim of the Sar of Mitzrayim, the claim of Paro, the answer to the Sar, and the rejection of his claim, the answer to Paro and the rejection of his claim. And all of that not only was seen by Hashem and Moshe, of course, but Yitro. The point that's being made here is that Yitro is coming along and saying, I see all of this, I understand all of this, and this is part and parcel of why Yitro himself made the profound commitment on his part to join the Jewish people and to link his future and his destiny with them. Yasher koach to everyone for joining the learning this evening.